right, welcome to another episode of the LogiCast. My name is BlankaKong. I'm joined by Gunner Eos today, a two-man show.
Hello?
Today's topic is going to be kind of an open-ended one. We're just going to talk about 2024 so far. We'll talk about some of the game releases that we've been playing, talking about some of the things that are happening in the industry right now, like some of the layoffs that have occurred over the last few weeks, and talk about how well indie games are doing right now and how poorly AAA games are doing at the moment. We did have an episode recently about quadruple A gaming and the beams tied to that. So there'll be similar overlap to that, but we'll stay away from Skull and Bones and those titles that we talked about that day and talk about some other titles. So that's today's topic. It's a little open-ended, but should be an interesting one. So,
Yeah.
Gunnar, what have you been playing recently, man? What's your 2024 catalog look like?
Okay, so as far as new games go, I'll start with that. I've been playing a lot of Grand Blue Fantasy that released this month, the month of filming, February. Been playing that. Actually gravitated to that more than I did Persona 3 Reload. Not that it's a bad game, I just, Grand Blue just caught me more. But I will get back to Persona 3. And that's about it for new games. Funny enough, which it ties into a little bit of this article, I recently bought the Arkham trilogy on PlayStation 4 because I didn't have a physical copy of it, and I wanted to get the physical copy of those games before they might become a little bit harder to find because a certain game not doing so hot. So I've actually been playing kind of Batman. I'm on I just got to Arkham City. Until next week when Unicorn Overlord comes out, and I'll be playing that till till that, and probably Batman Arkham Knight once I finish until June. Get some Elden Ring going.
Nice. Yeah.
So
It's a lot of
little bit of new, a lot of old.
Yeah. That tends to be how it goes here. I've been playing Power World and Tekken 7. Those are like the main games I've been playing. I also downloaded and tried Enshrouded, which is another survival game. So I've been playing that as well. And Sons of the Forest got its full release recently, so I've purchased it. It's downloaded. I haven't played it yet because I plan to play with a friend. So I'm looking forward to playing that as well. Nightingale also finally is in early access and available to play. It's another survival game that I'm gonna jump into at some point. It's just with survival games, they demand a lot of your time, so it's hard to play multiple of them at the same time without.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Without paying attention to the other ones. So that's pretty much it. I'm looking forward to some March releases. So Dragon's Dogma 2, which I'm sure you're also going to pick up.
Yes, forgot. Yeah.
And Alone in the Dark as well. That's going to be another one. It's going to be like my pseudo Resident Evil game here, I think. I'm not going to get any art titles this year.
Probably not.
And some other game. It's an indie game. Something Circuit. I forget the name. But that's coming out in March as well. I think there's another game. I think we're supposed to get Earth Defense Force this year in spring. I don't know if that's in March or if it's getting pushed back.
I could have sworn they moved that to summer or spring. I could have sworn.
Yeah, I don't know when we're going to get that. That's another game that I'm looking forward to as well. And I'm also getting some of the old EDF games as well. I feel like those games are going to go up in price.
Yeah, I was going to say you recently got...
Yeah, I feel like those games are going to go up in price with the popularity of Helldivers, so people might look for some alternatives to similar gameplay.
It is Helldivers-like.
Apparently. Yeah. So, with that being said, I'm going to link some of the articles we'll talk about description. This is Game World Observer. So, let's talk about some of the layoffs, which is unfortunate. It sucks whenever anybody loses their job. So I'll say that first and foremost. But this does tie into our podcast episode from a few weeks ago where we were talking about game development bloat. There's just too many people working on some of these projects. There's too many unnecessary departments, and this is a result of that, right? So, Electronic Arts cuts 670 employees, also canceling Respawn's Star Wars FPS and refocusing on old IPs and live services. Um, Live services, I don't know if they go into details to which games focus on, but I'd imagine their sports games are going to get like more of the focus, and
Yeah, I'd imagine.
things like
Yeah, they'd probably
Battlefield.
go hard on those. Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but like this is what happens when the bloat just takes over, and companies get too large for their own good.
Yeah, which kind of sucks because I kind of had a little bit of hope in EA when they released the Star Wars game, the Fallen Order, because the first one was pretty good, pretty true to Star Wars, and didn't really have any abusive like microtransactions or battle passes. So I figured they kind of learned after the debacle that was Battlefront 2 or Star Wars Battlefront um, 3, I believe. Yeah, yeah. Well, whatever was the latest one that came out on at the time, the current gen consoles, PlayStation 4 and whatnot, with their whole pride and accomplishment in purchasing loot boxes statement. So I figured they would have, okay, at least the Star Wars game is looking, or the Star Wars franchise is looking good with certain aspects of EA. So it's pretty disappointing to see that. I guess they considered that first person, the FPS Star Wars game, to kind of be a lost cause, and they that looks like it's scrapped along with the team that was working on it. So that's unfortunate, and kind of was like the only thing keeping me interested in EA as a property. So, but I know the majority of their revenue comes from their sports games, and the microtransaction farm that is them. So I knew like Star Wars wasn't their biggest moneymaker to begin with. So you know, kind of to be expected from them. In all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, anybody with half a brain cell could tell you that was inevitably going to be the case, unless those projects did like extremely well in the market. But obviously, that's not what happened, right? And the last Star Wars game was Jedi Survivor, which I think did well, but like not, it didn't meet expectations or exceed them. So
No, it had like a real rough launch with like bad optimizations and you know a kind of a similar story we've seen from a lot of AAA games where they release a game, it doesn't run well even if you have the best PlayStation the best PC or a PlayStation, and that kind of sours the release of a game because the game could be great, but people will remember the shoddy launch and the fact that most people nowadays, including myself, don't even really buy a lot of stuff when it comes out, especially AAA games, because I'm unsure if it's going to come out in a working state. So it's like, just wait a month. It might even be on sale by then,
sure,
which doesn't help for the initial sales of a video game. So
yeah, correct. So unfortunate. We're also seeing layoffs in Sony as well, despite Sony doing well. It seems like the untrained eye. It seems like Sony's doing super well, but like their system unit sales haven't met expectations. I think they missed it by 4 or 5 million units or something like that last year. So
oh wow, okay.
let's see if they mention it here. No, they don't mention it here, but I know that's the case with Sony. So um, they're also going to be laying off 900 job cuts across various studios, closure of London studio, and game cancellations. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, the move will affect workers across North America, Japan, Europe, and other regions. The layoffs will be made across Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Guerrilla Games, some of Sony's most successful first-party studios, as well as Firesprite and some of the company's technology, creative, and support teams. The London studio, known for making VR games for PlayStation, will close completely. So VR, not a hot
That's
category for them.
Yeah, I was gonna. That's crazy. See, that Sony released their VR2 along with the PlayStation 5, sort of cut the studio that was largely known. Because I before the podcast, I was telling Kong I had no idea if Sony had a London studio. I knew Sony of Japan, which made a lot of like the anime games or the Japanese centric games. They were gone long ago. But I had no idea they had a London studio, let alone what it was doing. Now I know they were mostly doing VR games. Very weird. Like so, like someone reading that is gonna go, "Why did I spend money on the VR2?" or "Why should I spend money on the VR2?" I'm assuming Sony has a plan to kind of keep their VR library alive, or maybe someone else will pick up the ball, so to speak, for VR. But very weird to shut down your studio making games for a product that you assuming want a PlayStation Sony owner to have or to buy more for. Because that VR2 isn't cheap. It's pretty freaking
I mean,
pricey.
it's more expensive than the initial console. It's $550 retail. I think 600 for the Horizon game bundle.
Oh my
So I
goodness.
mean,
Sheesh.
it's expensive, bro. Like I was gonna say, like it's affordable to like people who work, but like people who work have bills to pay and like responsibilities. So like
Right.
dropping $600 on an attachment accessory is pretty excessive, and that's not including like additional software. So like while you'll get the Horizon game with that $600 bundle, it's not including taxes. Um, there's you're gonna want to play other stuff on the VR, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like buying a game without it's like buying a console without buying games. It's like that's an additional residual cost over time. And then the VR games, none of them are really available physically, so they don't have a reason to put them on sale. So you'll be hard pressed to find those games on sale because typically games that go on sale are physical games in retailers. Uh, so you're going to be paying full price for these VR games. Some of them are cheap.
Yep.
Some VR games are like $20, $30, but you know it'd be nice to have an alternative. Clearly, they're
Yeah.
moving
Not
to
to mention,
more digital
yeah,
side.
Sony isn't the only VR headset out there. Like the PSVR is not the only
No,
one. You have Oculus, you have the Valve's version.
yeah, the MetaQuest 2
So,
was the best-selling VR headset in the VR sector last year, um, taking that number one spot. And the big reason as to why that is because it was pretty affordable. I think it was as low as $200 during the
there
holidays.
you go.
So you know, people are gonna jump on that opportunity if they can save $400 compared to your current device that
I
already
would.
needs a PlayStation, which is another $500. So I don't know, Sony, kind of a silly move, I think, with the VR. I think I would have had more software available before launching, but I just think VR is just not. I think VR is just
Yeah,
not
I,
best in the room.
I agree, but it just seems like Sony's handicapping or kneecapping themselves, I should say, by shutting down the studio known for making VR games. It seems
Yeah,
counterintuitive. I don't know. I don't have a business degree, so
I mean,
take it with
it
a
is.
grain
It
of
is. They
salt.
might be cutting their losses. We see similar behaviors when the Vita was still around, right? There would be times where like they would have stuff coming out for Vita, but like they just didn't advertise it, or they just like lost hope and let the Vita kind of die a slow death. And so VR2 might experience something similar. I don't know. Um, I think I think a better solution would have been to find a way to stream games on a VR2 without a PS5. That would have been more sensible, right? If you didn't
Mm.
need a PS5 system, but you could have a PlayStation account and download your games on the actual headset itself, kind of like how the MetaQuest does it. I think that would have been the way to go, because the way people see it is like, Jesus, I got to spend basically $1,000 to have this complete set. That's not including additional games or a headset or all these other pieces of hardware or software that I might need to fully experience to get the full PlayStation 5 experience. That's a big ask. That's a big ask. So
Yeah, yeah, and it's too much for me personally.
But anyway, moving on with the layoffs. They mentioned some game cancellations. Apparently, an unannounced live service game based on the Twisted Metal franchise, which is developed in Firesprite. Jason Schreier also noted that Guerrilla Games, the people behind Horizon and Killzone Games, will lay off 40 employees, which is a 10% cut of its staff. So pretty sizable cut. I mean, 10% that's a big number, man.
Yeah,
It's a big number.
but like, but look at what's canceled though. Like this goes back into like other topics we've talked about how like these big companies like Sony, Microsoft, and even development studios are kind of just like they see these other live service games being successful, like Helldivers, like your Fortnites and your PUBGs and your Valorants. Like the live service pool is saturated. Did we really need a live service of Twisted Metal? Quite frankly, a pretty obscure franchise nowadays. I mean, if you go to guys like our age who were around for the PlayStation era, yeah, we know Twisted Metal. But like younger kids and like 18-year-olds now, they have no attachment to Twisted Metal. Like, so why make it a live service? If you made it a single player game like Twisted Metal started out, you're gonna get those boomers, you're gonna get us coming in. It's like, oh, I remember fucking Sweet Tooth, he's my homie, and buy the game. But a live service, like, maybe it was for the best because that sounds like it was doomed to fail from the start.
I'll be honest with you. I like Twisted Metal from back then, and I have Twisted Metal 1 and 2 on PS1 still. I mean, I haven't played it in a long, long time, but I remember those games being pretty fun, especially in a multiplayer setting, playing with like friends and just kind of doing that weird like deathmatch or whatever. I think that game style could have worked in this online space had they did like a battle royale style Twisted Metal game with some like offline options, with some like single player story modes or whatever for each character, whatever that looks like with an online store. It could have worked, but I mean, for it to be just a full on, live service game, I don't know, with a whole season pass and an online only connection and all that, like, I don't know if people would have really gone for that unless it was free to play, which I don't think was the case.
Knowing Sony, probably not. Probably $70 live service game.
Right, which just not. I don't know. It's just not. I understand. Here's my thing.
Go
ahead, and then
okay.
I'll respond.
No, I just go back to like it's Twisted Metal. It's a good franchise, but it's a franchise that Sony hasn't been doing much with for the past couple years. Besides throwing in Sweet Tooth in like a nostalgia bait, like Twisted Metal arguably never had that IP power like Mario and Zelda for Nintendo for people to just like fall over themselves to try and get a Twisted Metal game. It's just like, no.
Yeah.
I'm just stuck on it being Twisted Metal. It's just a weird thing to kind of like think it's gonna take off via live service.
I think so here's the thing, right? There's a few things I want to point out. I understand from a consumer standpoint that live service is annoying. I personally hate live service games. I don't like it. But I understand why it exists. It exists because it is an effective business model, right? With the right franchise and the right market and the right time, like you can make a lot of money with a live service game. That's been proven already.
Yeah.
However, it is a very risky proposition, right? Your game, because the market is so saturated with different live service kinds of games, there's only so much money that can go around, right? There's just there's a limit to everything, and so you have to hope that your game is going to catch on and retain a certain level of popularity, a certain level of like concurrent player base to stay profitable. And for a lot of these guys, just being a little profitable isn't enough. They want to blow the fucking profit charts out of the water. Even if a game does, 25% more than its like initial cost, it's considered a subpar launch. And it's just like,
Yep.
but you profited, you made money. It's like, yeah, but not enough, right? We kind of saw that.
How do you make all the
Yeah,
money?
we
though?
saw that with Crystal Dynamics and Tomb Raider and Square Enix, and they eventually dropped Crystal Dynamics and the Tomb Raider
Yeah,
game.
that's
Like
true.
those games did pretty all right. They didn't smash the fucking market, but like they made money and the game was profitable. It just wasn't as profitable as they wanted it to be, or as profitable as past entries. So I understand from a business standpoint, they got to make money. They got bills to pay. They got people to pay. They got expenses. There's overhead costs. I get that, but the problem is the people who are making these decisions aren't people who actually care about the projects that they're heading. They see it as a product to sell, and that's that, right? Whereas
Yeah.
we talked about this in our past topic, when we talked about bloated game studios, where if there's like a studio head who's like really passionate about stuff that his teams or her teams is working on, like they're gonna have like skin in the game, and they're gonna have a vested interest to make sure that their games come out top notch, and the sales and the market's gonna respond. We see this happen constantly with Nintendo games. Like look at Metroid Dread. Look how well that was received. Look at Mario Wonder and how well that was received, and even Tears of the Kingdom and how well that was received, even with some of the subpar criticisms that people were giving it, like, oh, it's just it's the same thing as Breath of the Wild, right? Blah blah blah. Yeah, you say that, but like, look at the sales numbers. Like, the game still did super well, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know, if you make quality products, you'll have a quality sales numbers. You'll have a quality outcome. We see that with Power World. We see that with Helldivers.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
As
Yeah.
of recent memory, of recent history, the proof is in the pudding. It's there, and it's clear. It's a clear message from the market, from us, the consumer base, to the product makers that, hey, listen, stop making stuff like Skull and Bones. Stop making stuff like Suicide Squad. These games took apparently 10 years to develop, or 8 years to develop, and for what? For it to flop on its face because you were trying to take advantage of a market, of a business model from like 4 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like Fortnite is kind of like whatever now. It's still a successful franchise, but it's not the behemoth that it was in 2018.
It isn't.
or
No,
whatever,
no.
right?
It's just there. It's like if you're a Fortnite player, chances are you're already heavily invested into that game, so you're in.
Yeah, and it's reached a certain level of like it's kind of plateaued, right? It's still doing well, but it's like it's not shattering any
No.
records here, right? Anymore, at least. It might in the future, I don't know, but like that's going to take some innovation for them to make that happen, and that may or may not happen. That's why games like fucking Helldivers is just like rushing it, and that's a live service game. I haven't personally
Yeah.
purchased it yet because I'm a little salty that it doesn't have an offline mode that I could just kind of play by myself. That kind of annoys me, but I don't deny that there's great value in that game at $40, and all the content and polish that the game has. It's definitely worth it. I just haven't.
Yeah,
bought
from what
it
I'm hearing, it's a
personally.
very well put together game and fun, which kind of the essence of video games. Is it fun to play?
Yeah, and then continuing to talk about PlayStation, one article below the one I'm mentioning about the 900 jobs being cut is PlayStation operating margins plunged to decade lows, wiping $10 billion off Sony's market value. Right? Like,
Damn.
why is that? Well, I can tell you why. Is there a real value in buying a PS5 compared to just owning a PS4? Not really. Like, what are you really missing out on? You're missing out on maybe a few of the IPs that come out once a year. Right? It's your Spider-Man 2s, your God of Wars, whatever. But
Yeah, funny you mentioned that because Sony kind of just like shot themselves in the foot by announcing that they're not releasing any first-party exclusives for all of 2025.
all of
So
2024.
like
Right?
2024. So yeah. Basically this year, as of the filming of this. So if like you were on the fence and first party, I'm on the fence about first party games, but that could be a whole nother topic in and of itself. But like exclusive games sell consoles for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people. And if you don't have that, like, what's stopping a guy from just like maybe investing into a PC or getting an Xbox with Game Pass? We see how Microsoft is pushing Game Pass so hard. It's like, I don't know. It's like Sony basically announced like, hey, if you're on the fence about PlayStation, keep being on the fence because we have no exclusives. We have no exclusives in the pipeline. It's like a weird thing to kind of report, but I guess they have to.
Yeah, and that's a direct correlation as to why the cuts are happening because unfortunately the the big executives aren't gonna be the ones who take the hit here. It's like no, we're gonna have the little guys take the hit. Where can we trim the
Oh
fat?
yeah.
That's one of the problems. Um, and they mentioned in the article like the rising cost of making modern games and blah blah blah. And they mentioned Spider-Man 2. So the recent Insomniac revealed that Spider-Man 2 had a total budget of $315 million, including development and marketing costs. With over 10 million units sold globally, the game has likely recouped this investment. The studio expected a 35% return on its investment with lifetime sales of 10.5 million copies. So, I mean, it's great that Spider-Man made its money back, but does that surprise anybody? It doesn't surprise me at all. It's Spider-Man. And Insomniac is a pretty good studio, all things considered. They make great games. Although I think Spider-Man 2 leaves a lot to be desired, and it leans heavily into the modern game design of like what games are supposed to be today.
Yeah, I mean the article says it, but like, look at it, look at it in of itself. Like 315 million dollar budget. That's like, that's an insane number. And what happens if it wasn't Spider-Man? It ends up like Forspoken, where it fails and the studio gets liquidized and just it dies. Like, these games are becoming more and more unsustainable. Not every game is going to be Spider-Man 2. The Spider-Man IP certainly helped that game sell well. Right, the quality and the direction of the game, we can argue its merits and its positives and negatives all day long, but Spider-Man helped this game sell. If it wasn't Spider-Man and it was Man Spider, I don't know if it would have done as well. But if when you have budgets like these, every game has to be a huge blockbuster to even break even, let alone net you a profit. And not to bring real world stuff into this, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the world currently.
Mm-hmm.
And, the easiest thing to get rid of in terms of like your personal investment are luxury items. Video games being a luxury item. So, what is you as a gamer, what are you likely to invest more money into? A $40 game like Helldivers, which gives you hundreds of hours of enjoyment with randoms or your friends, or a $70 cinematic experience like Spider-Man that is probably a one and done because you couldn't even do New Game Plus until recently. We had to wait for an update to do New Game Plus. So, I don't know, man. These budgets are astronomical. We're rivaling the GDP of certain countries with these fucking budgets for video games. Crazy.
Yeah, it goes back to our previous topic when we were talking about game design blood, or game studio blood. It's not even game studios per se. I mean, it's part of it, but like it's the game industry, right? There's like departments that aren't directly linked to the studios that are considered to be a part of the budget, a part of the project's budget, and so that inflates everything. Another article that we'll reference here is the Steam charts. This is as of February 27th this year. Steam charts, several indie games debut in the top 15. Elden Ring and Batman Arkham Knight sales soar. So, what's this about? Just had Suicide Squad and Skull and Bones. How are these games not? Okay, well, the short answer is those games are kind of lame. These indie games are pretty good, and some of the old games, we're talking fucking Batman Arkham Knight, 2015.
Yeah.
It was 2015, right? This game came out? Maybe 2014. this game is risen from the dead because what? It's a good game. You just play it and have fun and beat it and move on with your life. Not have to be fucking bound by a fucking season pass.
Right. And you're also not told that you're shit for liking Batman, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, these games also respect the fucking source material. That's another conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So let's look at the top 10 here for this week. So Helldivers 2 at number 1, The Last Epoch at number 2. That's like a Diablo style game that I've been hearing a lot.
Look at Diablo. Currently, once upon a time, the reigning king of the ARPG charges you $30 for a horse. So
and the sad thing is, I think they're making money on the back end, so it's working for them maybe. But
yeah,
it's still disgusting. I mean, they're not making any money from me, or you for that matter.
No.
But
you gave me a free copy, and I'm still
I mean, and I didn't pay for that shit. So, but I just got it, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna play this crap, so might as well give it to somebody who might play it.
Maybe one day I'll play it. It'll get there. It's.
Elden Ring has had a resurgence in sales and player retention with their DLC announcement. Nightingale's up there, a new survival game that's in early access. Elden Ring: Shadows of the Erdtree at number 5?
5, yeah.
And that's a DLC.
Not,
and that's at the top of the sales. That won't be coming out for months from now.
Yeah,
and that's at the top of the list. Helldivers 2, second spot on the list, upgrade to Super Citizen Edition. So people bought the game and then fucking bought the upgrade, and that somehow made it to the top 10 list of sales for the week. Power World at number 7, still trucking along, still getting people to play. This is on Steam, by the way, so this isn't Xbox players getting it for free. This is people paying the full price of the game, or the full price of the early access version. Balatro, which is a roguelike poker RPG, something.
Deck builder, deck builder, because it's a card game.
Pacific Drive, which we talked about a little bit before the recording, is like that weird horror driving game.
Yeah.
And then Baldur's Gate 3 at number 10, still retaining its position. Game of the Year 2023, right? Like, there's no sign of anybody else. Any of the big, the big AAA releases from this past year. Even Tekken 8 is not up here, right? And that's another game that did really well. 2 million sales.
That's pretty surprising.
And that's not even up here.
I imagine because at the time of recording this, I think today was its launch day. Oh, actually, no. That's incorrect. Final Fantasy VII is a PlayStation 5 exclusive. Never mind. I retract my statement because this is Steam. I was going to say Final Fantasy VII Rebirth might be up here, but it's a PS5 exclusive at the moment.
Correct.
So.
And that might do well because there's a lot of weight that name carries. So we'll see. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of Final Fantasy VII.
No. I just mentioned it because I know it would be on this list. Or when it does eventually come to PC, because it will. The first one did. It'll be probably I'd say the top 5 if I had to guess.
Yeah.
But that's arguably a AAA game that does well. That is not a live service multiplayer focused clusterfuck.
So there's some interesting stats that they have written out here in this paragraph. Elden Ring experienced an impressive sales spike. Pre-orders for the upcoming Shadow of the Erdtree coming in at number 9, number 5 when looking at only at premium titles. As a result, the base game jumped 51 positions to 4th overall, 3rd among premium titles only. It's insane. That's a lot of new players.
Yeah.
Batman Arkham Knight returned to the top 100 highest grossing games on Steam, landed at 33 overall, according to Steam. It also peaked at over 6,700 concurrent players last week. For comparison, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is now having under 1,000 concurrent players following its disappointment. That's
sad.
Which is insanity. That's
going to cause matchmaking issues. You're going to have a hard time finding people to play the game with.
Big time. Again, we saw this happen with Marvel's Avengers, right? And Kind of saw happen with Gotham Knights a year or two ago. Here's the other Batman game. Another Batman game without Batman in it. I don't know what to say, man. Like, proof is in the pudding. What you deserve. Paul.
Yeah, I mean, it does show that, like, okay, Helldivers 2 it's a live service game, but it's not an egregiously disgusting live service game. It had server issues because there were so many people wanting to play. Like, literally, that is literally the definition of suffering from success. You have so many people wanting to play your game, you're having a hard time housing all. But like from everything I've heard, Helldivers, besides personal reasons, I'm not playing it aside. It's fun. It does not nickel and dime you, and it's a good entry point at $40. It just proves that these guys are just full of shit. As far as I'm just gonna say it, that gaming is more expensive. We have to charge you $70 for your game. We have to add all this stuff on because gaming is it costs so much money to make. Then what's Helldivers' excuse? Like, come on, like, I don't know. It's
the fact of the matter is
so,
they want throwing their solution is let's throw a bunch of money at something. The more money we throw at it, the more money it's going to make us. And this is like that's not how it works. Anything art related, you can pay a musician millions and millions and millions of dollars to make a song that's just going to hit, and that musician may never pull it off because maybe they're just not talented enough to do it, or maybe you're not giving them enough time to actually produce the music that you want them to, right? And so it's the same thing with like video games. Like, stuff takes a while to make, and it takes like real passion to make this stuff good.
Yep.
And just throwing a bunch of money, like, okay, I want it done by Friday. It's like, what? That's not enough time. It's like, well, what do you mean? I gave you all the money. It's like, that's not how. When they say time is money, that's not how that works, right? The more money you spend on something, like it just fucking becomes like it increases your fucking time in investment. Like this, humans have a limit. Like we don't work like that. It's just how it works, and that's how they think it works. Like these people who are investing into these projects are just like, well, we're just going to invest a bunch of money, and we want to see this. We want to see these kinds of results in this timetable. It's not, and they do it in an unreasonable fashion. I think there needs to be timelines. I think there needs to be deadlines. But like, come on, like you gotta work within reason. You gotta be sensible about these things, and I don't think that they are.
No, they're not. And then they'll just blame the studios and lay people off, which is why, people who had passion for the industry, assuming, are being let go because to these guys they're just a number on a spreadsheet, and I need to get rid of this number needs to go, and that means their job.
Yeah, the last part of the article here is huge discounts. Several 2K published games saw its sales skyrocket, including NBA 2K24, up to 71 places at 84% off. Civilization 6 returns to the top 100 at number 36 and 90% off. People want cheap games to play. They want cheap games that are... Not that 2K24 I think is a complete game because it still has a bunch of microtransactions attached to it. But, I'm sure there are some players who like, I could use a fun little basketball game to play, and if you're charging me fucking $6 for it or whatever, sure. Same with Civilization.
Yeah.
I'll try this game for $3, whatever. I don't blame people. Gaming is an expensive hobby. So to expect people to pay top dollar for shit and then be nickel and dimed on top of paying top dollar for something, I don't know, it's just unreasonable. And in some cases, it does work. Like, you see that with FIFA every year, or FC Sports, or whatever it's called now. You see that with that game, but like not everything can produce the same results. That's unrealistic.
Yeah, but even with those guys, like every now and then you'll see like a Reddit post or something where one of these like FIFA guys just like, hey guys, are we getting ripped off? Like, why do I have to buy like my favorite player every game? Like, even it's starting to hit them. Like,
Yeah.
it's getting so bad that even the most normie of normie is starting to wake up to the fact that they might be getting nickeled and dimed, which is it's it's funny for guys like us who've been like, yeah, you've been getting ripped off for 10 years. You just unplugged yourself from the Matrix. Good job.
Yeah, it's like the
But
GIF, I guess a pirate movie or something with John Franco. Where he's like your first time, he's like on a noose.
oh yes,
And it's
yeah.
like yeah. So another article that talks about some of the layoffs. Another huge layoff. Supermassive Games. The layoff up to 30% employees as a part of studio reorganization. These are the people behind Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology, which are like the Man Up and Damn, Dark Pictures games. It's like those like horror narrative games that like based on your decisions kind of determines the story that's played out. 150 of its employees are about to be about the upcoming layoffs via email. Roughly 90 of them will end up losing their job. 30% of the studio's headcount, more than 300. That's a lot, man. 30% cuts. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, like these games, like I don't know. Like I always assumed that they had less, like their budgets were less, because this is like a super niche audience. At least the way I see it, it's like it's a super niche. It's courting people who like visual novels.
Mm-hmm.
People who like visual novel games are very, very small compared to the group of people that want to play something like God of War. So I figured these guys would be pretty okay because they're working within their niche, and they realize, okay, well, obviously, the massive population that plays video games aren't going to bust down the stores, the doors of GameStops to go pick up the latest Until Dawn game. So I figured, like much like visual novel games, they would budget their games accordingly, knowing that it's a niche audience that they're courting. But I guess but then when you look at like games like the Until Dawn series, I've seen a playthrough of it. Very, very like very well. Like these games look very impressive because they have to. Like the gameplay is so limited. These games have to visually look super impressive, and the voice acting tends to be pretty spot on because you're hearing hours and hours of dialogue. So whereas you could kind of like split that up between graphics, gameplay, and the voice acting with these type of narrative games, it's graphics, huge chunks are graphics, voice acting, and then a smaller percentage is gameplay. So I guess even they have their own financial hurdles with their game, which is very surprising because this is a very niche game series.
Yeah, you say that, but like I'm pretty sure that the budgets of these games are pretty huge because they usually have like some pretty high ranking actors and actresses working on these projects.
Yeah.
So like I'm pretty sure they don't come at a low price, and then there's like the people who have to write, the stories and all that, and then just like the people who have to work on the rigs and the graphics of the game. Like these are high fidelity games. These games look really good, right? And so that takes time, man, to produce and pump out. And yeah, I don't know, like how many of these games can you really make before you start to plateau and like stop being profitable? Hard to say. I don't really know. This is all
like that because like like the people who are going to play these games are already a small group of people.
Yeah, because I can tell you, I've sold a lot of like those kinds of games. Like I remember when The Quarry first came out 2 years ago, and people would ask me like, "Oh, what's that game about?" And I go, "Oh, it's like you ever played Until Dawn? It's kind of like that, where it's like a narrative-driven horror game. So the gameplay's a little limited, but it's more about the story and more about like the director kind of determining what
Yeah.
happens next. And people would hear, they go, meh, I don't know. How much is the game? $60? Yeah. You know, think about it. Like, what you're really paying for is for an interactive movie. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, to ask somebody to pay $60 for a movie, if that's kind of like, to the normal consumer, it's like, that's a lot. You know? At least with, like, with certain games, like, you said you were playing Grand Blue Fantasy, right? Like, that's a $60
Yeah.
game. How many hours do you
hmm
have clocked into that game?
About like 150.
So most people who've played The Quarry finish it within 10 to 15 hours, maybe. I think I'm being pretty generous there, right? And you could argue that there's
Yeah.
replayability. You know, there's options. So like,
Different choices,
sure, but like,
endings.
how
Yeah.
many people are
Yeah.
really gonna read to see the different
Out of that
outcomes?
small
Very
fraction,
few,
probably a
very
smaller
few.
fraction.
Especially
Yeah.
in modern days where you could just YouTube all the endings and get the same
Oh
level of
yeah.
satisfaction as far as knowing what happens. It's like it just doesn't work, guys. Last paragraph of this particular article. All of these articles are going to be like linked in the description, so you can check them out. Supermassive is just one of the many studios that have been hit with layoffs in recent months. Mind you, we're in March right now. We're about to hit March, so we're only 2 months into the year. According to the game industry's layoffs project, there's a link there for that. Over 6,100 game industry professionals have already lost their jobs since the beginning of 2024. The list of affected studios include Unity, Zamu or Zaum, ZA/UM,
A slash.
uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
Piranha Bytes, Pyrat, Microsoft, Activision Blizzard, Eidos Montreal, and Riot Games, and more. So a bunch of people losing their jobs,
Yeah.
which sucks. Like,
Oh,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna side note. With the Edo stuff, they ended up basically shelving Deus Ex, which made me personally sad because I love the Deus Ex games.
I mean,
But
we haven't seen a Deus Ex game
yeah.
since like
Yeah.
something like that. 360.
Yeah. Eidos hasn't
Oh
really
no, there was a
done.
PS4 one.
Yeah, because the reboot was PlayStation 3, and then there was the sequel to that was PlayStation 4.
Okay, so then close to 10 years.
But other
It's
than,
been
but
a
it,
while.
yeah, it's been a hot minute. But yeah. So that's what's it's hitting the industry like on a large scale, and not just the game industry. You see this with like movies and television shows. The entertainment industry as a whole is getting hit because, like I said, there is things going on in the world, and the easiest thing to cut are your
Luxury.
like your luxury items, and video games, movies, and television. Those are all luxury. So, during these lean times, if you want to sell a video game, it's got to be worth my time.
Worth the
It
money.
sounds pretentious, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is why a game like Power World is like I was so happy. I've been following that game for years, man. Ever since I first saw it like in 2021. I saw a trailer for it. Whoa, this game looks crazy. You know, fucking just creatures with like guns, and you can capture them and like use them for like labor and build your base and all this. I was like, oh my god, like this is speaking to me on a deep level. And I got it. You know, I got over 200 hours in that game already, and I've taken a break from it. You know, I haven't played it in a few days, so I'm at 200 hours would easily climb up to close to 250 if I had been playing. Um, but that's a game that it offers offline options, also offers online options and like co-op options, which is nice, and like it's a pretty deep game that you can just kind of like you can do a bunch of different things in it. Like I can focus on base building, I can focus on completing the decks, I can focus on breeding the best version of a particular creature. I can focus on doing dungeon runs. I could focus on world bosses. I could focus on exploring the rest of the map. I can there's a bunch of little things I can do, which is nice. And the game's in early access, and they're gonna continue to like pump out content for this thing eventually.
yeah,
And I can't wait to see what the final product is gonna look like. probably won't see that for another year or so, which is fine. But I'm pretty sure like that, whoever hasn't played Power World yet and is waiting for a full release, like whenever we get there, they're gonna get a real juicy big game to sink their teeth in that they probably won't have to play anything else for a good while,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just gonna be chock full of content. That's what we're looking for, and that's a game that's been in development for since like 2019 or 2018. It's been in development for a long time, and that's my point. It's like games need time to. It needs time in the oven. I want a cake and I want it right now. Here are the ingredients. Make it in 10 minutes. It's like, no, I'm gonna need a little more than 10 minutes to make this cake. Otherwise, it's gonna taste like shit. It's not gonna be
It's gonna be a shit
right.
cake, yeah.
And so that's what the industry needs to understand. Things take time. And so I think there's a space for live service games that you can always kind of come back to. I think there's a space for that because those games can be easily the buffer between the big releases. That's how some people play games. Some people will play Call of Duty Warzone as like their main game. And then they'll take a break from Call of Duty Warzone to play like the Spider-Man 2s and whatever. And then go back to Call of Duty as they wait for like the next big single player title. So I think there's a space in the industry for live service games, even though I don't really like them. But I can respect that some people like those kinds of games and they'll invest a lot of money into them because they enjoy them. Same with gacha games. I hate those games. I think those games are cancer. But like that's just my personal opinion. I know that there are people who like them. So I'm all for the free market. Let the market decide what is popular and what works and what doesn't. So I don't know if you had any.
Yeah, I mean no, I was just gonna say like the world's oldest form of live service games were MMOs.
True.
Or still are MMOs. And that's like how you described the theoretical guy taking a break from Call of Duty. That's how MMOs worked. Like the next like expansion would come out, you'd play it heavy, you might raid, you might do all this crazy stuff. And then there's like a lull where they'll add content, but it's not like super big bombastic content where you could play and then you would take a break. You might cancel your sub for a month, or you might just play casually, play with like to keep up with friends and whatnot, and play other things. So like that model has always existed. I just think like a lot of these big companies, these game companies, they just see the money that these live service games make, and in some way they think in their heads they think that you could just keep that going 24/7 365. It just does not work like that. The human attention span is not that long, and it's only getting worse. So like they'll like you said, they'll play Warzone for a bit and then they'll go play Spider-Man, come back to Warzone, and then Final Fantasy comes out, they play that. They're not always going to be on Warzone 24/7, so you're not always going to get that battle pass for this month out of any particular, out of that guy, because he's playing 7 right now, for example. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
these guys, some of these executives are like, I'm sure that they're having conference room meetings about like, well, how can we get this guy to not play Spider-Man and continue to play Warzone and buy the fucking Terminator skin or whatever. It's like these guys don't fucking sleep. Yeah. Like they don't sleep. They don't take a day off. They're always trying to scheme and like scam people. Just make good shit and people will come. Another article I'll quickly reference before we close. Stardew Valley surpasses 30 million copies sold. How it compares to other successful indie games. 30 million copies over. This is the lifetime sold. That's a lot, man, for like a small little farming game. That's had residual income for the people behind the game for a long, long time. That game came out. Let's look at the stats here. The first 12 days it sold 425,000 copies. Within 2 months, 1 million copies. By the end of 2017, which is when they came out, 3.5 million copies. That's already beating fucking Skull and Bones. And then year after year, it 10 million copies, 15 million copies. By the end of 2022, they had sold 20 million copies, and then they now have arrived to 30 million. This is the same exact game, right? Once you make one really good game, people will come back to it. People will buy it multiple times on multiple consoles. new players will play it. Like every day, there's new babies being born and more kids getting into the older years, into their teenage years, and they're getting introduced to games, and they see this game, like, oh, this is a cool game, and they pick it up and they buy it. And, like, if you just make a good game, it can test the time. It can stand the test of time. You can continue to sell it and dress it up and resell it. Look at Skyrim. Like, how many different consoles is that game available on? Right? I wonder how many sales
you like 3 console generations.
Like that thing came out in 2011. Right? That was a long time ago, man. And it's still talked about today. It's still like a game that's streamed relatively often. Look at the Dark Souls games. Like, people still play that game. Still talk about it. This is a great game. But these guys are so stuck on the here and now, the fast money. They want as much money as quickly as possible to get in and out of the industry. And these are the people that we need to cut out. These are the people we need to gatekeep out of the industry. We don't these fucking piranhas, these sharks who just want to extract money out of the gaming industry because they just see it as like an easy, low hanging fruit gold mine. Those are the people we gotta like exercise out. We don't want your type, your kind in here. Get the fuck out of here. Take your money and shove it up your ass. Like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because like, unfortunately, a lot of cool video game franchises that we grew up with, that were classics. A lot of them are dying out, and they're suffering, and they're being belittled and diluted just to appease the suits. And it sucks losing some classic IPs and classic franchises to the modern quotation marks gaming. It sucks because we care, but they don't give a shit. They don't know when X game came out, that it came out on the Super Nintendo back in the late 80s, early 90s. Like, they don't give a shit. They just know, oh, we tried to make a live service of it. It didn't succeed. Shut the studio down. Shelve the IP.
Speaking of which, like, we were talking about Sony earlier, and, we didn't mention Jim Ryan by name, but, like, he's the guy behind, the PS5 launch and all that. Like, he was the head of the Sony for that time period. He's retiring, or he's leaving the company now. Right? I think he's either left or he's leaving within the next few weeks. He was the same guy who was ready to close down the PlayStation Store for the PS3 and eliminate all the PlayStation classics. And there was a direct quote where he's like, "Who even wants to play these games anymore? What the fuck? Like, why would you want to play this stuff when we have all these other great new modern games?" And it was a lot of backlash, and Sony ended up not closing PlayStation Store for the PS3 and for the Vita. And part of that reason, let's be frank here, is because they made a lot of money those few weeks that those rumors were going around. I know I spent like $300 on just downloading PlayStation Classics on my PS3 just to have them banked, because it's like, well, shit, if the store's going to close, I got to get my copy of Adventures of Trombone and Mega Man Legends 2 on here for $5. Are you kidding me? Yeah, put that shit on there. And a bunch of other games that I downloaded a fuckload of PS1 and PS2 classics. And I'm sure I wasn't the only one, right? And I'm sure they show a spike in sales, and like, whoa, wait, whoa, hold on, Jim. Like, there's a fucking demand here for this. Like, shut the fuck up. Stop talking about these old games, because we're making money here. Don't close those servers. And the servers are eventually going to close down. That's inevitable. Yeah. But there is a demand for complete games, even retro games, and there's definitely a demand for quality games. We see that with the retro games. Not the retro, but the indie games coming out over the last few years, especially this first half, or the first few months of this year, between Power World and Helldivers 2, amongst others as well. Like, Forest is doing pretty well. The Forest, Sons of the Forest. The other survival games like Enshrouded. What's the other one? Nightingale. Like, these games are doing pretty well. And Epoch, the last Epoch, like, these games are selling, right? And people are eating this shit up because at the end of the day, we're just gamers, man. We just want good games to play. We're not trying to fucking deal with ads, in-game ads, or fucking battle passes and all this other shit. Like, stop it.
or making it a job. Like a lot of people work jobs. I don't need to work another job in my pastime to justify this battle pass. Like, well, if I don't put in 12 hours a day on gaming, this battle pass isn't going to be filled, and I just wasted $40.
Oh, but
Nobody wants to do that.
I could just give them another 20 and then get all of the get to the level skips.
Yeah,
it's disgusting.
yeah.
No matter how you slice it, it's gross, and it's just like, you know what,
Yeah.
man. These guys aren't respecting players. They're not respecting us. They're not respecting what the industry is founded on. And I say kick these people out, man. They don't deserve to be.
Through
They don't
that.
deserve to be here. Anyway, that's our kind of recap, I guess, for the last 2 months of 2024, or the first quarter of 2024, I say, because I talked a little bit about March as well. Looking forward to in March. I guess we could do this every quarter, huh? Maybe that could be a thing we do.
Yeah.
Like, we'll do 4 episodes in a year. We'll kind of recap the last 3 months. Just kind of talk about what's going on and what we hope to see, and that could be a thing.
Well, yeah. Any surprises that happened over the months? Yeah, I'm down with that.
So maybe that'll be a thing we do. So, yeah. So that's quarter 1 of 2024. Pretty happy to see that indie games are making a strong presence, and AAA games or quadruple A games in some cases are eating shit. You know what? And we're seeing a direct correlation to the layoffs and that happening, right? And it's going to be an interesting next few years. I think we're going to see, like, 2025, I think is going to be a great year as far as like major releases with GTA 6, Monster Hunter Wilds, Pokemon, the new Pokemon Legends game. Those are just games that we know about.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right? And there's going to be other stuff that I'm sure is going to come out and, like, great. Not to mention whatever indie developers are working on. But after that, I think things are going to slow down considerably. I think once those big releases come out, we're going to see a real sharp decline in quality releases, because the people who are being laid off right now are people that would have been working on projects that would come out 2026, 2027. So that might have a direct effect on how much content we see within years, which are going to be the twilight years of the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S. So it's going to be an interesting few years. We'll see how it pans out, and maybe we'll get better content in the late 2020s.
Yeah, I mean, layoffs always suck because someone's lost their job, and that always sucks. Whether they're whatever their opinion on the game, on what games should be like and how you should enjoy them are. But maybe that's gonna spur some like creativity and better products because the bloat is being cut.
That's what I'm hoping for. So, like, next console generation, I mean, it's kind of early to be talking about this, but assuming there is a PlayStation 6 or whatever, Xbox universe or whatever they decide to call it, I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'm going to stick to my bet and say that whatever the next console generation is going to be, it's going to be a service and not a console. It's not going to be a box you buy. It's going to be an app you download. Hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. Hopefully we'll see some really good stuff come 2029, 2030. Assuming we're all alive and the world isn't burnt to crisp. We'll see. But trying to stay positive. If anything, listen, if I gotta be in a bunker with a generator and my fucking Super Nintendo, then shit. I got some games to play, so I'll be alright.
Yeah, while our AI overlord farms us for fucking our electricity or some shit.
Jesus Christ. Farms us for our fluids. Every day you gotta donate a pint of blood or whatever.
They
happy.
They can take my arm, but they can't take my 3DS.
I'll be entertained while in my pod. Fuck it. So, anyway, that's our quarter 1 of 2024 episode. Basically a recap over the last few months. Just our general opinions on some of the things happening in the industry. To those who have lost your job in the industry, we wish you luck. Hopefully you get back on your feet. Yeah, we'll see what the rest of the year holds for us gamers. So, with that being said, check us out on social media. Those the links will be in the description. Give this video a like or a dislike if you enjoyed it or disliked it. Subscribe for more content. We do a podcast every single week. Wednesday at 12 p.m. is when it publishes, Eastern Time. Check out Mr. Esoteric. He's not present for this conversation, but he is the host, the leader, the founder of the channel. He streams on Twitch every 2 to 3 days out of the week. The link will also be in the description. Check him out there. He also has a Discord for the Twitch channel. So, if you're on Discord, join us there as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll see you next week. Later.
All right. Have a good one.